Alright, new league, new build. And for once, it's not a Juggernaut. And it's not melee. I'm coming at you with the new Reap / Exsanguinate Ascendant. And as you can see from my tree, I'm basically taking as much Juggernauty kind of stuff as possible anyway. That was the original idea behind this build. I was trying to make Reap work on a Juggernaut, and then I realized, hey, why don't I just become a Scion for some crazy bonuses? It may not be as defensively oriented as your Bone Shatter Juggernauts or your Shield Crush Juggernauts that I've played in the past. That Shield Crush build did really well, by the way. I did rare, formed, and twisted invites on that. And the goal with this build is to be a bit more diverse of content, because this build, what it makes up, what it lacks in some of its defensive layers compared to a melee build, it makes up for in having range. That's a big thing. You've got chaining skills from Exsanguinate. You've got the ability to not just stand close to everything you have to kill. There's a lot of value in that in Ruthless. So like best of both worlds. A lot of tankiness, but also can hit stuff from further away. We love to see it. This tree here, you will notice we're taking loads of this kind of like the life era stuff because we want to stack life because we're spending life to cast spells, but we mitigate with that with just a decent amount of regen. But there's a bunch of extra layers we're going to put into this build to make use of this life leech and life regen. You'll notice the life leech is there. We'll talk about how we get that online in a second. Big disclaimer before H-Bomber guy comes after me. This build was largely lifted at first off a guy called Physics. For those of you who don't make builds yourself, one of the best ways you can make a build for Ruthless is find someone who plays solo self-found hardcore, take a lot of their ideas, and then take out all the stuff we can't get in Ruthless and see what you're left with. So huge credit for him for like putting together a lot of thought into this, especially in how to get leech into the build effectively, because I've thought a lot about that myself and how that's Ruthless viable, because a lot of the time it feels like it's only an endgame viable thing, which leaves you without a valuable defensive layer, which stuff. Anyway, why are we playing Scion? Not many people play Scion. I think it had like 2% play rate in Toto Trade League in Ruthless. He had some Aura bots, some good Flame Link Aura bots running around, I think, with it. Otherwise, not many people were playing this, and not many people were playing Reap and Exsanguinate. And Reap has had buffs. I made this build before. I was testing this build before the buffs got revealed, and that's quality, and that's going to depend on our access to quality, if that's going to be a reasonable thing, or if it's just going to be a super endgame thing, because we want Val Reap as well, so 20% quality Val Reap is going to come to, like, never. Why are we playing this build? Why are we lifting this idea? Because you get these kind of builds in regular Path of Exile, but you don't see many people talk about these skills in Ruthless. I can tell you, I've tested this on a 1-link, with the... I don't play self-cast builds that much. I think this is the best self-cast starter at this point, and I say that having said I don't play them that much, so someone else with loads of experience can chime in and say otherwise. Another guy called Shack Central has been testing the same kind of build. He's going to run the same sort of thing, probably not the same setup as me, but that's what the kind of thing he's going to play as well. And on League side, he's been testing it as well, finding it great. Big shout out to him. He has a great primer that I'm going to put in the comments of this video if you want to check quest rewards and learn how to make your own builds and ideas yourself from that. Scion gives us some crazy bonuses that are really valuable for a physical damage over time build. We say with physical damage over time, we have a very significant hit portion as well. So it's relevant to keep that in mind when we're taking damage on the tree. But what do we have from Scion? Because we have all these options, and it can be very daunting to work out what to pick. I'll tell you, there's a basic blueprint for playing a strong Scion in Ruthless that especially helps this build, and it's Raider plus Slayer. You take Raider first. Raider gives you Onslaught while you're on full frenzy charges, which is easy because you just take Blood Rage from your first Seosa gem to have it while clearing. The degen's fine, we have loads of regen. You don't use that while bossing. While bossing, you just throw like a Stormbrand or Void Sphere, depending on how mobile the boss is. And that shit hits like twice a second, at least. So you're easily going to get that 10% chance proccing, and you're going to sustain those frenzy charges, and you're going to sustain that onslaught, and you get phasing. And phasing is huge as well. Phasing is huge for delve, it's huge for mapping, it's just no desyncs. I cannot believe I played the Chaos Dot Occultist, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed playing. I didn't enjoy the downsides of the Walsh League, to be honest. To be honest. but I did really enjoy the build archetype working with Recoup. You can check that out in a previous video. What I did not enjoy was not having pure stun immunity, and I did not enjoy getting cock blocked by things as I was walking around, and I would just desync. And I don't think it's even my internet's stable, it's fine. So that's a common server-side issue where you're playing on I think I'm playing on lockstep. Whichever mode it is where like it's more stable, but you get these random blip backs, and it's like, hey, you're actually over here. I hate it. Anyway, this prevents a lot of that. So much of that with phasing. So this for like this, you get this in your second lab, and if you know what you're doing, you'll get this in your third lab as long as you path these things correctly. Just take this 2 bits last. Slayer is going to give us cull on everything, so we don't have to stock it. Culling strike support, which is like, oh, it frees up a support socket, but also makes everything more comfortable because you don't have to make sure you use a certain skill to cull. That's just nice. But it also gives us overleech. So cull, we've said for 10% more damage technically, but it's not that much of an opportunity cost. But the overleech is going to be really relevant when we can get our leech online, and we'll talk about leech a little later. The other thing you get from being a Scion to make up for the fact that, yeah, these together, maybe that's not like a 4-point worthy ascendancy. Cool, we get extra passive points. We get 5 extra passive points. We take bandits, so we get 7 total. This is huge because, as you see, I'm playing around with clusters. There's different clusters ideas. There is a possible endgame setup I mathed out for the value of. You can do loads of different things because the clusters you're able to farm in Ruthless, you get what you get. So if you're able to get some really cool GG clusters like these 3, use them. Just try to use them because you're going to get a good boost of damage. And Scion having those extra 5 passive points mitigates the downside of Ruthless. So many other people experience... Oh, I'm actually level 92. So many people experience in Ruthless where they can only hit like... This is aspirational thinking, like, this tree is mapped out as level 92 currently. Which, you know, it takes some life down. It's level, oh look, it's a level 90. I usually cap around level 90. But like pushing higher than this is really, really, really hard. Level 90 in Ruthless is like level 100 in the main game. So every extra passive point we get from this, we can put into clusters. It makes it so much easier for us to make use of clusters potentially in the end game. Over here, when we're starting to farm Delirium properly, when we've got some Void Stones and we can devote time to that, you can sustain Delirium very well. Just ask the rank 1 Solar Self-Found Ruthless guy for the last league. He was just farming Abyss and Delirium for a while, using Delirium Orbs primarily because Simulacrum shits them out if you can do 20 waves. And this is the kind of build that, like, this might be able to do 20 waves with enough investment. I think I'm optimistic. So that's the value of going Scion. That's a real heavy value of going Scion. We get 5 extra passive points. That lets us access clusters and play around the clusters a lot more easily, because that's where the damage scaling for physical damage over time comes in the most. That's where you want this raw physical damage. This is just raw spell damage basically for us, and you want the damage over time, mediums maybe, depending on how much you can fit. And there's loads of cool things you can do with small clusters as well. So it's just really cool having that capability, and we're getting that on top of these bonuses. Reflect Immune as well from Slayer, which is going to help when we realize that this build can run 7th Gate very comfortably compared to a lot of other builds, especially compared to like Bone Shatter. Bone Shatter gets fucked over by, oh that's why I pressed this by accident. I'm level 91. What am I doing? Don't need that. So you might notice we start out here. We take this stuff. There's some physical stuff here. This isn't as optimal as taking other stuff, but you can take it early. XYZ. You've got your skill effect duration. This is going to be really important for our strategy because let's talk about the way Reap and Exsanguinate work as skills. If you're not familiar with them, Reap is a big scythe. It's like you play. It has not a full 360 area. It's like a Pac-Man shape. You get used to it. But it's range, so it's like playing ranged cleave with a very strong hit portion and a very strong dot portion for the value you're putting into the skill. So it can stun enemies with the hit portion, which is great, and it's going to deal heavy damage over time after that fact. And if you are only hitting one enemy, it's going to scale up in how much damage it deals with the blood charges that you gain. Let's just look over here for a second. So yeah, normal Reap, you get the blood charges, you can see at the bottom there. You lose them if anything dies, but during, like, when you're fighting a boss that matters, often it's not going to be spawning that much stuff, and you can just try to kill stuff with Exsanguinate instead. The real The really important thing with this build is I've been mapping out what to do about the fact we use 2 skills. If you don't like the idea of playing 2-button builds, you're not even... I don't know why you're even playing Ruthless, so don't worry about that. Like, everyone plays a more than 1-button build in Ruthless. This is fine. We're going to be using 2 skills for bossing mostly. We're going to be using Reap, and then we're going to be using Exsanguinate. We're going to alternate them at a rate that makes sense for the DPS we get out of these, especially when we get Vile Reap. We get up to like 9 blood charges. That's crazy, because they do like each blood charge gives like 20% more damage. That's 180% more damage at max. So it makes sense to use that as much as possible when you have the Vile Reap buff. But you also want to keep the Exsanguinate damage going as well, because it's a separate damage tick. It's like the closest thing to Cold Dot, and I think this is better than Cold Dot because they fucked Vortex out of the void, unless they're going to unveil a trans quality of it, a transgender quality of it that's instant cast again for my boy Shaq Central, who is crying in the corner at them having made it a non-instant casting skill. I feel bad for him. He loves it so much. I feel for him. I'm sorry, man. But yeah, it's really important to take the skill effect duration. We want to take Malevolence as an aura eventually. This is built around trade, so obviously if you're SSF, you use what you get, but Malevolence is going to be great for more skill effect duration. Efficacy support on like everything that can hold it. More skill effect duration. This doesn't have that, but like, you know. This doesn't really need it anymore because the quality buff to this gives it so much more base duration now. It's great. We'll talk about that in a sec. You'll notice here we go down here, although when we're leveling we don't necessarily go down here, we go over here. We'll talk about that later as well, because there's a little bit of a respec trick you can use to make your early game so much smoother. Basically you want to rush here and here. But otherwise, yeah, we go down here, we've got Unwavering Stance, we take Iron Reflexes if we have any evasion on our gear to convert that, because it's just a chunk more armor, it's a very point efficient node. If we're going over here for more life as well, because we're going over here later for leech, we don't have to take this. Don't take this until we have leech. This is lower priority, ignore this, take this stuff, go up here, and we can take 2 aura effect wheels, but you only really need to start taking those when you're getting your auras. But there's cheaper auras to find on trade early, like Pride, War Banner, probably Malevolence is going to be not too expensive as well. All things considered, it's just Determination is the one you really need to squeeze in at the end, when you can afford it, or when you finally find it dropping in. I'm going to focus my advice on trade. SSF is like whatever to me. I don't know how people play SSF in Ruthless. I'll be honest, gods and kings play SSF in Ruthless because I don't have the time. I don't have the time to like play the game for 500 hours and potentially never even get a 5 link. So, but you'll notice otherwise the tree is like, it's quite straightforward. We take life, we take armor stuff, we take physical damage stuff, and we take any other goodies where we can, like the max res stuff here. You'll notice we're stacking extra fire, max res. We're doing that because one of our damage layers we'll be using is, I don't fucking care if it's nerfed, I'm not using it for damage. I'm using it for 39% more spell damage to my other damage. So I am using it for damage. But anyway, this build can use Righteous Fire. I mean, we get a huge degen from it, but with stacking fire res and leech, that can be mitigated. Oh, sorry, a regen that gets mitigated, then leech on top of that is going to make our life costs a lot easier and give us that good recovery that we want anyway. One thing I'm going to hugely miss about my Shield Crush build is I had like 4,000 leech per second eventually on that build because I went Val Pact plus Makanga Tattoo boosted by a Warrior's Tail for extra. I like quadrupled my effective leech, and it made the whole build feel so good. But here you see where our total net recovery for this build currently is like 700 life, and then we add the leech on top of that, and we're getting like, generally we're getting like at least 2k back a second, which is it's fine. I'm happy about that. There's some other questions with the gems on this build we'll come to a bit later as well, like, you know, do we want to get a cast when damage taken setup, or you just self-cast Molten Shell? If you can leave a little bit of your mana unreserved, it depends on the setup you're taking. But there's options to leave a bit of that reserved. Then you could not life tap this, and this can be cast when damage taken. It's up to you. You need to life tap the vulnerability though, because that costs too much mana, unless again you can free up a tiny bit more, but this is very tight on mana. We don't use mana for our main ability, so we don't really want to have to invest in it for other things. Lots to play around with there, and you'll find the cluster options later on give you those kind of options where you can increase mana reservation efficiency and then like equip something without the implicit for mana reservation in the end game, like Falls fucking Vision, which is amazing. let's talk about this. We talked about this tree enough, I think. We know what's going on here, but we also get a lovely regular jewel socket for when we actually have a jewel that's worth equipping. Let's talk about our leveling trees. I put like 10 different leveling trees, just plotting my own progress of how I went from Act 1 to maps on this build on a 1-link with no issues whatsoever. I say that the Weaver kind of kicked my butt for a bit, but that's just because she's annoying to fight with Exsanguinate because the spiders get in the way, and also annoying to fight with Spectral Throw, which I was using for single target because it's really good for single target early if you know how to use it, but she would move around a lot and her spiders would kill the totem too quickly, the decoy totem. Literally that was the only problem I had. On most other spellcasting builds I usually have problems somehow with like Apiary Piety maybe or stuff like that. Until I can get enough of my damage online or my defense online, whichever I'm missing. This build was just smooth. It was so smooth. We start in Act 1, and we're just going to take this lovely nugget here. This is all very nice and close. We go through this physical damage, take power of the warrior. That flat armor, we take that as a level 4. Boom. Now we get stunned way less because we have armor, and we're just taking life. So we're just... well, our life threshold's going to go up quite well, and we're already going to get, like... Ignore the life regen amount. This is... We have a fucking Immortal Flesh and Kizakara equipped in the gear. But you can take this life battery early. You take this, you take that. You just stack life at first because you can have enough damage from these few nodes just at first, and then we're just going to rush up here. We can take Iron Will quite quickly, but it's only going to affect Exsanguinate, so it's not as important because you probably want to use Spectral Throw. And even if you don't want to use Spectral Throw, you might be using something like Puncture. For your single target DPS for like Brutus, you can mule that, it's an option. There's loads of other options as well. Important here that I take this first. The regen's nice if we stun something. It doesn't happen constantly, it's not that much regen, but it's something. These are just point efficient damage nodes early, and then we get this, which gives us 40% increased physical damage on Exsanguinate on top of that. So you see that's a significant chunk of DPS increase. This is comparative to getting when you're down here and it's like 40% increased damage with hits against rare and unique enemies. Boom. Well, that's that, but for everything, which is quite crazy. Exsanguinate pops off quite well when you get it for the Mayavale waypoint, and then Reap later on pops off even harder. It feels great. I wouldn't take these early though, because you'll notice that the effect this takes 8% DPS, but it's just not as like, you don't have to take it right away. You can take it a little bit later. I like to... Oh no, I do take it. Yeah, you take this. You take this one first. You take this one second. Because this only affects the dot portion, and the hit portion early on is pretty solid anyway. So, and then we just run over here. You want to take these big nodes as soon as you come across them, because this build does not. We do not go up here. So we're going to want all the intelligence we can find, and then we go down here and we take this. And again, we're going to go through the generic damage increase, because you'll notice like this is only affecting the dot. This affects both the dot and the hit, and the hit is decent, and you get a bit of overwhelm for the hit. That's just going to help stun things more as well, which is this is a survivability layer. Have you seen the survivability layer alignment chart in PoE where it's like true, neutral, whatever? Now this is a valid survivability layer. Stunning stuff with spells. It feels good. And that's not very complicated. We take this by, I mean, you know, level 24. It's estimating we're in Act 3, but like you can easily be doing if you take Bandit, kill all the bandits, you can easily get all of this stuff by the time you're doing like the Act 2 boss, whatever the fuck it's called. And then we go along here, saying we're Act 4, but it's easy to like end your Act 3. By the end of Act 3, you have this roughly. We then take the regen here, because 50 life per second early when we don't have as much max life is cracked, and that gets boosted by 15%, so it's more like 65 life, and you get all the percentage as well. This is just really worth taking. Vitality is already going to help offset the costs of your life-based spells just fine. Don't worry about that. This just adds an extra defensive layer. It's really nice for Izaru, because I didn't ever wonder like, oh, am I out of my life flask and I've taken a big hit? No, it's fine. Even if you're sluggish and your DPS is a bit slow because you haven't even found a wand that does anything yet, you're going to be fine versus Izaru. It should be fine. And then we can start taking life, and we can go down here. I like rushing down here first, get more damage, reduce the life cost a little bit, doesn't really matter. But life on kill from Cannibalistic Riot and this damage, this is nice. This is just, it's not insanely point efficient, but it is nice to have a bit of life on kill on top of everything else we get. Misclick. Going to Act 4. I start going down here. This is where things get funny. Do you see this branch here where we go over here and then we go down here? We don't follow like one linear path because these nodes are also nearby. It's nice. There's a big chunk of life here and a bit of extra strength, and there's physical damage here. The attack speed's nothing, but the strength is spell damage, so who cares? Yeah, this is like, yeah, this is almost like 30% damage for a node, which is fine. And then we get more regen here and more strength. It's just, these are just good nodes. They're not like insane nodes, but they're good nodes, so we take them. And then going into Act 5, we take the skill effect duration. There is an option to take this in Act 4 instead. There is an option. Depends how you feel. Like, if you have no resistances on your gear, it's nice to take this. And as another option, instead of going through these 3 points, you can just take these as well. This is like 18% all res for 3 points. You'll see in like a later tree, I think I just have these allocated anyway because it speeds up your access to maps if you get more of that res, and it's justifiable putting them on and respecing them later for that value. Just boosting your progress. 18% all res here, and then you've got another like bunch of res down here. So you're gonna see like we go into Act 6, boom, we take this res, and then we can also take, and then I think we're in Act 7 already again, but who cares? And we can take endurance charges for more stability. That's really, like, you don't get many levels or skill points going forward per act. We go down here now. We can take Unwavering Stance. You can take this earlier as well. You can instead of taking res here, if you're fine on res somehow, you can get stun immunity first. Depends how you're feeling. If you have more armor, this is maybe less of an issue. If you don't, maybe more. You can do these things in a different order, but this is the order I did them in. So around Act 7, I'm making sure I finally take Unwavering Stance. One of the things we can't do is mitigate the downside with Iron Reflexes yet. So if you do have any evasion gear, that's going to nullify the defensive value of that, which is, it's not nothing. If you're being hit by a bunch of enemies at once, that 20% chance to evade attacks does add up a little. So it's not nothing. And going into Act 8, you'll see we have this big change. Once you link up this stuff here, once you get this sort of things, we're in Act 9 again, I don't care. But you make these links, you can prioritize making the links first with the travel nodes. Then when you make the links, you spend 5 respec points. You have them by now for free. And it's worth just spending. You might be like, oh my god, that's expensive, 5 respecs. But what we've done is we've made our early game really cozy by having down here. And now what we're doing is we're just taking 5 points here and putting it into like these wheels or this or what, you know, whatever stuff we're able to do. You can go hit around here for fast, but you don't have to path down here for anything early, so I usually just go through the life nodes, like 6% life, they're pretty good life nodes. We keep the end here, and we can take this off later as well, so, you know, we'll eventually just like cleave that down, like so. You might be looking at this and think, well, maybe, you know, let's go back to Act 7, maybe it's worth taking stuff like combat stamina. I don't think this is a stronger node as many others. It's like, you get a bit of regen, you get a bit of armor, you get 5% life, which isn't that much, and you get like 3% before it, or a bit more regen, but this regen doesn't add much. To our overall regen pool, we're going to reach towards the end game, and for 3 points, like, we're taking this armor node down here, we're going to take this later as well. We can't invest too much into armor, otherwise we're not investing enough into other things, which is my logic for like going this way instead. It's just more point efficient to go this way instead and drop this, not go through here. You do lose the chance for the dual socket, but in return you get a more efficient tree. You can disagree if you want to and go up here. You're not gonna crash the game, but this is how I think the tree should be pathed. You'll notice here as well, I haven't been looking at lab, but like around the time you've done for Cruel Lab, you want to take Raider, then you want to take this, which means you can take this and this next for Merc Lab. If you do this, and they'll be like, oh, a passive point! Now you can't get Slayer. You have to take like this and this. Now you can't get Slayer until Uber Lab, which I don't recommend because Cling Strike is just nice and is worth more than like a passive point. So do this. Cling Strike is literally 10% more damage when you don't have any support gems. Crazy! Get it in Merc Lab. Act 9, we start filling out our another little extra bit to get more regen extra here. We don't have to keep that later, but before we have auras and stuff, it's nice to just juice up our regen like here, because like, it's just nice flat regen. And And if instead of doing this, you can just like, you can go over here still. If you want to keep this one, respec this one, and then just, you can still go into here. You can take the life up here as well. There's lots of options. This isn't very point efficient. It's just like 5% life nodes, ending in a 10. The reduced cost of steals doesn't really matter. We mitigate this anyway. That's 5 points, so yeah. But there are options. You can also just like head up here earlier. Everything becomes a lot freer in Act 9 because I just didn't find any issues whatsoever. Playing this game from like Act 6 to 10 on a 1-link, no problems. It was cozy, it was steady. It wasn't like you're deleting things, but like it's just steady damage, steady defenses. All the love I have for like leveling with like Shield Crush or Bone Shatter in a spellcaster, which is why I like this kind of like setup here. And the more you stare at this, the more you think like, surely there's a way to join this up more of it. No, this is best. I think this is best because we need to take this. And then in Act 10 we can start, like, you'll see I take these here because when we want to go into map, we just want as much res as possible, and we can go up here and we're taking all the res here as well. If you have all your all pieces armor already, you can take this, but if you, it makes it harder to swap around gear without losing the bonus, so I don't take it as early, but it's an option. And that's taking us level 69, which is like entering maps kind of like level tier, which is very cool. And you'll see here we've got 2 life masteries so far. One of the things we're going to be able to do in this tree after Act 10, we're going to do this quite quickly because there isn't too much. It's very common sense. Take life, take damage, take armor and res, take regen. And the only weird thing is like there's a skill effect duration wheel here. And we don't take this one here because it's too far away. But even this is a potential like extra option if you just want a bit more comfort for like just making your stuff. It's not important. I wouldn't take it. This gives 1% regen, but we don't care about the mana. I don't think that's important. Your mileage may vary. This tree next here is early mapping life stacking, and what we can do is, because we already have a bunch of life stuff, we can start taking, there it is there, 10% more max life. You have 6 life masteries allocated, and you'll see here we quickly can stack up a very large amount of life. This is us at level 75 with 4k life comfortably already. I mean, that's with all the life, a bunch of life pieces on our gear, to be fair. No life on the shield, but there is like decent life modifiers on like a bunch. No, nothing on here. There's life on here, and we have an immortal flesh. Okay, we have an immortal flesh, but it's our total, and this is with reserve, so our total life is actually 4.7. So yes, you can easily get like 4k life. You don't have to reserve vitality with arrogance until later on when you want to activate this mastery and fit in the rest of your auras. It can just be on mana first, so we're going to have a very good chunk of life, and we're going to have a chunk of armor. Ideally, we're going to pick up armor. All the armor gear is most important to pick up an ID as you go. We're going to have the block comes from the Exarch shield, ignore that. We're going to have our max res already built up a good bit as well. So early mapping should be very cozy. Very cozy, even if you've got no support gems, no good drops. The core of this build is that you're gonna stay alive generally, unless you make stupid decisions, which is what you want for a starter, because it's going to make you push levels easier if you're staying alive. And if you push levels easier, you can then invest those points into more damage or survival, whatever, but you have better progression. And then when we get like, well, level 85, look, our life capacity has just gone up by, look at that. This is a tree where we still don't have any determination, or we don't have an option for leech yet. We'll talk about leech in a second, one of them is very important. But we still start taking the aura stuff because this gives you non-curse auras, because we'll get our other auras quite comfortably. We can start reserving our life if we want to, or we could just take the increased damage one. I might change this to the increased damage one. We can still go over here, take iron reflexes. This is lowest priority, but you take it in the end because you're going to want to take this later. And there's a big reason why this is like, what have I done? Took something off. Guess this one. You want to take this later, and there's again like this stuff. I took off these nodes here, but you can take off these nodes as well later on. Just take some slightly less important stuff that's still valuable that you can shave off later on, because we're going to take sovereignty through here, so that's like 4 points. We're going to take this through here, which is another 4 points if you want a mastery. You add it up. You can take off the int nodes when you find int on gear, hooray. So there's a lot of flexibility. And that's going to push us into our normal tree eventually, where we get our 2 aura wheels, we've got our leech, so we can take our leech stuff and gain a big bonus from that. So you can see how the tree slowly develops, and this is all within the 20 respec points you get offered for free. And I always say on your starter you should plan to use those where possible. It's just better to plan that out. If you don't plan that out, then you're leaving money on the table. You can create advantages for yourself early, then use that resource later. If you plan on playing the full long run and you're sure you'll find a use for it later, then sure, hang on to some. But this build doesn't have to respec any of its ascendancy points for anything, which is very valuable. So we can use all that for like doing this thing here, taking this off here. You're gonna be fine. You'll notice on here that below here there is a suppression version of the normal tree. This is the one I started with. Again, courtesy to Phys, who I'm probably pronouncing incorrectly. You can go over here instead, because you'll notice we're right next to Magebane. You might have seen this earlier, and you'll be saying, "What the fuck, Mr. Allocates? But you're right next to Magebane. Everyone loves Magebane. You know, you're already taking Iron Reflexes. You know, you just take Magebane. You get a chunk of suppression." And you'll see with this setup here, look, we are level 91, and we cap our suppression. Hooray, we have spell suppression. Everyone loves spell suppression. Spell suppression is the most amazing thing in the world. We get charisma instead of this wheel here, so that maths out, and we take master of blades instead of this bit here, so that maths out, and we get a dual socket as well to mitigate against this being maybe slightly less strong than this, or whatever. And we get the lucky suppression here, because that's the closest wheel for it. I mean, the other suppression wheels are like, there's like one up here, which is like 5 billion years away. Unless you're trying to take pain achievement for some weird reason, with like a fucking... There's a coward's legacy in here for a reason, but I wouldn't think too much about it. This is an option. You get a chunk more dexterity for anything you want to use strength and dexterity gear, or just pure evasion gear. Sometimes you can take this. You can take the suppression mastery here if you can get full evasion or armor/evasion gear, or whatever. Or you can just get more movement speed. There's a bunch of positives. The negative, you notice, we only have now 4k life after we reserve vitality, and we are reserving a level 20 vitality because it's better to just generate more regen. I mean, like, look, we can go in here ourselves, and we can just pare this down. And hey, my max life's going up and my regen's going down. Regen is very valuable, which we'll talk about when we talk about this more. So I started out with this, and I was thinking, this is, 4k life should be fine. And then I mapped out that we can go, for the same amount of points, we can get 30... How much is it in total? It's a bit over 33% more life. I'm very bad at quick maths. Like, extra 1.5k. So that's like 500, so like 400 is like 10%. So it's about 30. It's going to depend on your gear as well and stuff like that, and what exactly you take. You have to take all of these. You can put them somewhere else. Cool, but it's like 30 to 40% more life. And the thing about suppression is it doubles your EHP against spell hits and the ailments they cause. Cool. We get hit by a lot of spells, I'm sure, but we also get hit by tons of attacks, and especially with the shaping nodes giving extra rainbow elemental damage to all sorts of physical damage you're taking. A lot of that's going to come in the form of attacks rather than spells. You're getting shot by the archers, you're getting jumped on by big rares with big stinky melee hits, whatever. Especially if we're doing ultimatum, I think a lot of the ultimatum monsters use big stinky melee whacks. Don't quote me on that, because I haven't played it in like years. Purple on 3.4 was ago. Jesus. But the most important thing, it's like, yes, this boosts our EHP versus spells, and it's like a go-to for a lot of people. If you can reach it, go take it. You see, Magebane doesn't give us damage suppression anyway, because we're not stacking damage evasion, so it gives us more when we go down here for sure. But I think 30 to 40% more life is better than just doubling your EHP versus spells, because this is giving us an increased amount of hit points versus everything. Attacks, spells, degen, whatever. And because this build doesn't have any source of like permanent freeze immunity, it has some extra cold breaks, which is going to help. It has stun immunity, but no permanent. You get that on the flask probably. It's just nice to have the bigger pool, I think. and just getting a smaller health pool, which we're spending life from as well, so that's going down. And it's not constantly down by 1,000 per second because we're constantly regenerating it back and leeching it back, but also a bigger life pool means more leech because of the maximum, so that buffs our leech as well. So I think this is going to be the default tree. The other reason I don't think going suppression is a good idea for a league starter is you need suppression gear. You can't you'll notice there's like 16% suppression down here. I have a couple of mods. It's like 2 mods on the gear, which is all you need, but even finding that with all the resistances you need, it's going to be hard. So rather than do that, I think you're much better off just going the life stacking route, which still helps you against, it's not like it doesn't help you against spell hits. You get some Chaos Frizz up here to boot, it's quite nice. And the reservation on this side is also a lot less tight. You'll notice here it goes right to 0. This means we have to life tap fucking Stormbrand if we want to use that for the Frenzy Charge trick, which sucks. So I would go this route. I'm just recommending this, ignore this. The tree looks like this basically, like that. Okay, nothing else exists, okay? Cool. And then like below this you have like this cluster setup. This is like purely endgame stuff because you need like GG clusters or whatever to make it work. But this, as I said like a while ago, it lets you equip something like Vol's Vision and we can still have enough mana to cast stuff because we've got the reservation from clusters instead, which is cool because this gives like 400 life per second if nothing is corrupted, which is great. Although it does limit you if you want to like corrupt some things. Let's talk about leech. Coolest mechanic in this build is we get leech from spells reliably because we can get Cerberus Limb. You might be like, that's a unique Mr. Allocate Speed. That is a unique. We're playing Ruthless. This is just like the heist uniques I talked about with the Shield Crush guide, where they're target farmable. This is target farmable. It's in Delve. It drops as the common drop, as far as I'm aware, a common drop from the Val Architect, which is the most common boss. I've found like 5 of them. I don't even like hardcore delve that much. You can find one. You'll definitely find one on trade for not much because I don't think many people use it. And you might look at this and think, there's no way this is good because it's not a +1 Fizz dagger, which is obviously what we're going to get from a vendor as soon as possible if we can see one, or hopefully we can drop one or buy one, whatever. This, look at this, look at the DPS. It's comparable. Spell, the 90% spell damage, you can get a higher roll as well. It's comparable DPS to a +1. It does slightly decrease our armor because if we have a determination, but whatever. Yeah, because that's a physical gem. Who cares? You'll notice the modifiers on this is quite strict though. You need a 30% chance to block shield. That works with the Exarch shield when you finally get it, which is one of the best shields you can equip. But until then, save your 30% chance to block shields. Whenever you find one with extra chance to block that hits, save it, hold on. Anything with a good evasion value as well, you can get extra armor out of it for that second to last mod. The cast speed is so good as well. You might notice the implicit does nothing. I don't care. The implicit is like, you can corrupt these if you find loads of them as well, but most of the modifiers on scepters are unfortunately like flat damage added to the weapon itself rather than anything else, so not really worth it in my opinion. You're going to brick them half the time anyway. And then if you're wearing a corrupted one, then you can't use Vol's Vision later. But this is something I plan to use for a while because, like, you know, this is only like 5% more DPS, and that's with like a decent chunk of spell damage. And then if you ever find Cold Iron points, that's why, you know, double Cold Iron point just like makes our DPS funny. But this is Ruthless, and you know, you might find the entire player base might find like 3 or 4 of these per league. So life search if you want them. I think Cerberus Limb is one of our best weapons to just push into red maps with because it gives us that spell leech. But the other source of spell leech is this one, which is physical damage leeches life. I'm going to keep this on here just because it's what you can get later, which means you can upgrade from this. But you have to roll this with Icarus. It's an Eater mod, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's an Eater mod. So to get this, you have to roll, or you have to find good gloves. And you'll notice the GG gloves I'm putting here have the essence modifier. Looks like a crafted modifier. I'm very sorry because no crafted modifiers in Ruthless. This is an essence modifier for an essence of Delirium, or it's one of them. Check it. I can't remember off the top of my head. One of the 4 super essences gives this mod, and it's great for putting your. It's just an extra support gem. It makes your Exsanguinate a 5 link. which is great for clear. That's GG though. Again, you don't need that for most of the game. Don't worry, this isn't like, oh, you need this to function in fucking white maps. You'll be fine. Same with this stuff. These are uniques. They're not like super high rarity. Immortal Flesh and Kikozaru. Double Kikozaru is totally an option. It makes you functionally curse immune. I love the idea of running this. This all feeds back into the idea of like, you're getting 3 life per second, so that's like, if you're level 90, that's 270 flat life per second, boosted by your life regeneration rate, which can also be increased by boots, and Immortal Flesh can add another huge chunk on top of that as well, when I'm like 300 something, so you get loads from gear, pushing our life regen up to like 2k, which is going to let us turn on, let's talk about Righteous Fire. You're going to get this maybe from your 3rd Seosa gem. Just pick it up, make sure you have it, because it's annoying to Mulefall if you don't, or you have to buy it. This got changed, obviously, but only for people who want to use its burning effect. All we want is the more spell damage, which has been kept in effect. And maybe it gets an alt quality that gives even more of that, or just doesn't do it at all. I'm guessing it's one of those. Anyway, we want whatever, not alt quality, transfigured, trans gem. Whatever version gives us the more spell damage best, we'll use that one. You will notice that, yeah, with 1.9 life regen, we don't have Blood Rage on either. Good. No degen, and then we turn this on, and our net regen's going to become... So on this setup right now, this is just killing us with like 700 life per second-ish. But that's with extra fire res. We have fire res modifiers on our boots. We have a +2 max fire res on our chest, which we can get. I think that's with slightly better. That's like the grand... Is it? Hang on. Fire res. Yeah, you have to roll that with a grand. You can just use a +1. I put a +2 on here because that's aspirational. I like being aspirational. I've done plenty of aspirational stuff in Ruthless, so I like planning for it. Getting up to 85% makes that easier, and you'll notice if we drop, let's just change our boots for something that doesn't have. Let's just take our boots off. Which is going to increase our life. Our net recovery goes down pretty significantly. That's like 200 less. We lost the boot enchant, regenerating life per second while we were hit, but we never wanted to rely on this anyway, so who cares? And there are other options you can put on stuff for like more regen, more, you know, before you have Dawnbreaker, you can get a shield with max fire res on as a mod. As long as it has like 30% chance to block if you're using Cerberus Limb, just make sure you keep to that. But yeah, I'm very excited to use this weapon. It's not that uncommon. People have never sold it for much because they never really value it. I value it very highly. Chunk of cast speed is going to be great because otherwise we're relying on Onslaught for cast speed almost entirely in this build because we don't scale it. Really cool. Ignore the clusters unless we're like in endgame. But like that's generally the gear breakdown as well. Flasks is just whatever as well. Whatever makes sense. Just get some like chill stuff. Get corrupted in metal blood flask. Get some armor. Get at least 1 quicksilver. Maybe use 2. Whatever. In terms of gems, by the way, this build has loads of notes. I should have mentioned right at the start. I might have clicked on it right at the start, or yeah, I did. But yeah, there's a good breakdown here if you don't like the sound of my voice, or you just prefer things in text form. For the gem progression, you know, you start with Spectral Throw. We're going to use Spectral Throw and Splitting Steel for a bit in Act 1 with Decoy Totem, and then we're going to take Exsanguinate, get Corrupting Fever on top of everything else as well. Vulnerability, Reap. You don't get many gems from Ruthless. You gotta make do with what you have. You can Mule, Molten Shell. There's some other options there. Big support gems early are stuff you can put on both Reap and Exsanguinate, which is basically anything that, you know, good supports for those. Brutality, Efficacy, Cruelty are all good because you can then buff both of them. But the best supports for Exsanguinate early are Unleash and Chain. Unleash is going to let you just shotgun out your full... Exsanguinate has 3 stacks, basically. For those who don't know the skill very well, let's go over this quickly. Exsanguinate can stack up to 3 times. And that's going to be... I don't know what the other... I'm making this video before the gem information's out for the alternative, the trans Exsanguinate. If it's cool, POB it, put it in, see if it results in a better effect, use it. But I'm just basing decisions around the base one. Putting Chain and Unleash on that for clear and quality of life, where you can just walk into a pack and then you just... And that's gonna... That's going to make your clear as comfy as possible. I'll put brutality on that for the most damage possible. So yeah, well, if you have the option, if you are, let's make this red because I missed it. If you have the option in trade to buy different support gems, some of the best options are these early, but also getting this online just turns your clear up to 100. I would deprioritize Swift Affliction. If you drop it, use it, cool, it's worth it, but like it reduces your skill effect duration, so you're gonna be able to stack the two dots not as well. Not as effectively, because you want to be able to use Reap and then Exsanguinate and then Reap a few times usually, and then whatever works with how much duration you have on Exsanguinate, depending on the quality you can get on it, because the quality is going to bump that up by a ton. So yeah, some good information about your support gems here. The cheaper auras to find on trade potentially from people earlier on and progressing past that. The idea is to just make our progression as smooth as possible. Focus your Atlas on just like pushing those tiers up and up and up and up and up, and then eventually you're going to get to red maps and you'll be ready. Especially if you can get your Cerberus limb online, because it's so much extra recovery, and it's as good as a +1 Fizz one, which is crazy. Didn't really know that until I checked it. And there's a bunch of stuff about gear here as well, which has already gone over a bit, but like just little notes on what each piece can be. Little note on gloves: you can get Replica Khaleesi's Grace, which supports everything Soccer's in it with Unleash, so you can get a 5-link Exsanguinate with that. They don't give resistances, so that's from Heist. I plan to do Heist early on again because it's just good XP and loot, even if the rewards have been changed and aren't even as good. You can't get auras from it anymore, and gems, but you could do lab more now. And farm lab more. Merc lab's probably gonna be worth farming in Act 10 for gems, which will be interesting. There's a bunch of separate notes here on when to turn on Righteous Fire. There's no exact bath, just, you know, you can put it into your own PoB before you turn it on to just check, like, oh, you know, is it gonna kill me? No? Cool. Just make sure you have enough recovery to spend the life cost for your spells. You probably don't turn on RF until you have leech for this build. And as well as that, yeah, there's a whole section on. We have this whole section on leech and what helps with that. The suppression option, why we spend our respecs, and Atlas strategy. There's some nice notes here. But yeah, this, I cannot emphasize enough how comfortable I felt in the acts of this build, just like slowly progressing this tree and having just the time of my life just practicing this and realizing these skills are cracked. They're cracked for Ruthless. They have Reap has amazing built-in single damage scaling. It as a baseline with no quality, you're getting like 75% more damage at max blood stacks than what it gives as a clearing skill, which gives it that kind of dynamic that Shield Crush has, where Shield Crush does damage in an area but does damage more to things like single target close to you. That's what you want for your skills in Ruthless. You want them to be able to like do both. That really helps. Before Reap and Exsanguinate as well, shout out to Spectral Throw. Did not know how cool that was, but as long as you can get a decent base weapon, like a decent axe, you can just put your decode totem down, run back a bit, get the right distance, and then you just chuck it, and it does so much damage to stuff. It's great. As long as you're happy playing, I say in the notes, you have to. It's a boomerang game. If you don't like it, just be all puncture. I don't care. But I like it. And the fact we get stun immunity on this build, really comfy, really nice for a spellcaster to get that. And yeah, I can see this build. Let me just give you a demonstration of like, okay, we've got cluster set up here. Full DPS is misleading because it kind of counts Barrel Reap as its own thing, which we're not using constantly at the same time. It's very hard, but like you want to tick a Barrel Reap, otherwise you don't get the effect of the blood charges effectively. It's kind of hard to map out. This isn't perfect, but just look at how this damage goes up when you say like, okay, let's say we can find 2 cold iron points. Instantly we're just like, we're doing that much more damage. That's kind of crazy. I'm going to put on Vol's Vision for this setup as well, because that gives us the regen, so we have more regen. Maybe let's lead for more regen. Less life on this version as well. We're still life stacking, we just cut down on life a bit because we're putting clusters in. But yeah, that goes up to that much. Yeah, this isn't actually 5 million per second, but It's pushing boundaries that aren't easy to push on starter builds in Ruthless that have this level of tankiness potentially. I like it. I like the sound of it a lot. It looks good on paper. It's felt good in practice leveling it. Obviously, I don't have the experience of playing it in the deep end game. This is like peer beat for 93, which is a bit intimidating to try to get that far. I usually cap at 90 myself. I went to 91 last league. But, you know, I think you get the idea of the build. I hope you get the idea of the build. Nothing too complicated. No crazy mechanics. Just bear in mind that for single target you can use both Reap and Exsanguinate and alternate between them with enough skill effect duration. You're getting both dot effects plus Corrupting Fever on top of that, which you can link supports to. If you don't find other uses for your support sockets, you can put extra stuff on this as well. It's just, you can do that. You can try to work out how to get vulnerability on life tap and cast damage taking on Molten Shell, but I'm kind of down to self-cast it just to try to get used to doing that, because we leech so much constantly that if our Molten Shell triggers when we're taking a bit of damage, it's not as important because we're usually going to regen and leech very quickly. But if we notice our life going down a half, we can press it as a panic button. That's probably going to be better. I think self-cast Molten Shell is better on this build. And this is also for, oh, this is a fire link. Boom. Boom. More damage! Yay! Anyway, let's take these off because it's not terribly realistic. It's possible. I've seen there being more than one cold iron point in the league, so yeah, I've dropped one. I dropped one last league. I didn't use it. I should have made this build. Didn't really realize how much it scales. Also, we get curse immunity of 2 of these. It's really nice. You just lose the other. You need to get resistances elsewhere. There's a config here for like sort out your fucking resistances, and it's, you know, it's not too hard, but like Immortal Flesh makes it harder, obviously. So it's easier to run 2 of these and a belt with loads of res than to put res in your rings, probably. But this is also really nice for the armor. Lots of options, as usual in Ruthless. Work with what you get most of all. Don't stress if you don't get to this direct blueprint of what this looks like in any way. You're going to find your own way, depending on what you get, and that's going to be the most effective solution to everything. Just focusing on what you have and what you can do with it, especially the support gems you drop. And if you drop something GG for another build, feel free to abandon this and just do something else, because this is all designed around slow and steady progress for this kind of core idea, but the things you can do in Ruthless if you get the right kind of unique are kind of crazy as well. So yeah. Anyway, I am really looking forward to the new league. I'm looking forward to seeing what the alt qualities for, not alt qualities, I'm not going to get used to saying that, trans versions for Reap and such are. But I'm very happy with how this is PoEing with just the normal gems. It looks great on paper, it's felt great in practice. To emphasize again, everything fits together. I'm not warrioring this stuff at all. You see how many little things are ticked, and everything that's ticked is also automatically getting recognized anyway. We got frenzies, we got endurances, no one gives a fuck about power charges. And also this is in here just to map out the effect of having, just so you're aware. This isn't worrying, this is the buff that we're getting to quality for Reap. It's giving us an effective increase in the more damage effect for that, because it's not just like 5% more damage per charge, it's plus 5%, which is different, plus 5% more, so that maps that out correctly for the build. The build's DPS got buffed, kind of crazy. Also, big note at the very end, but you can use my favorite skill if you use Cerberus Limb, and that's Consecrated Path. You just have to find somewhere to fit it in. You can always just drop like efficacy here. You know, space. This is not essential at all. This is just fluff, so you can just put it here or wherever. Yeah, Consecrated Path just feels so good. It's I love it so much. I mean, I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this live. Let's see what kind of attack speed it would have, because we're not scaling that much at all. So let's put Consecrated Path in here. I might just keep that there now. Anyway, this is just our junk folder basically. It doesn't have really any mana cost unlinked as well, so you can kind of just like use it and you're going to regen it back, it's fine. But you can also just keep it at level 1. It only costs 8 mana, never mind. And yeah, Consecrated Path Chance to create a path. Attack rate of 1.5 per second that's enough to make it usable. It's with Onslaught. And yeah, but that's fine. It's with Onslaught our frenzy charges. Otherwise it's a little slow and sluggish, but the big effect of it we're gonna get is those being able to jump over gaps, being able to, we have phasing, but being able to blink on the other side of a big pack and like delve and stuff is so good as well. So I'm gonna keep that as a tech. Strongly recommended. And there must be other stuff you can do with it as well in this build potentially if you have the time to work out cooler interactions with things. But anyway, that's the build. I hope some people try this kind of thing out, even if you haven't looked at this guide. I hope people who haven't, like, don't even know I exist, I hope they check out the build, because it's just lying there as a great starter. It's been lying there since last. I didn't play this last. It's the same with every league. Shield Crush was what I realized I should have played in Crucible, because Crucible was the league of buffing your shield, and then I did well with Shield Crush. And then this league, I'm mathing this out, I'm like, shit, I could have played this last league and it would have been still really good as well, so whatever. Just whatever you play, whatever your league start with, I hope it is as comfortable as this is feeling if you're not playing this. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Let me know, just, yeah. There's a link to the PoE. We've got all the trees in there for everyone. Let's put back on the other ring so I don't get a warning from the internet. There we go. Don't want to scare people like, oh, well, how do you get all the intelligence? You put it on a ring. Or what, get it on, I don't, there. You know. Anyway. Yeah. I have no idea how to end my videos, so